If you're in a job interview and they're assessing your Excel skills, here's what you do. When they say, oh, do you know VLOOKUP? What you want to say is, yeah, I know VLOOKUP, but I prefer XLOOKUP. And it's going to blow them away. So.
Hey, welcome to 10X Your Team with Cam Otis. We're a father-son podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And you know, Cam, we haven't said this in a while, but folks, if you ain't hit the subscribe button on YouTube, you know, it ain't that hard. What's it cost you? I mean,
less than $5.
Yeah, it's less than $5. And I laugh because I give Miss Suzanne a hard time. She is a critical liker on social media, which for me is the exact opposite of how I do things. It's like, well, if I'm following that person and they're a Facebook friend, click, click, click. Same thing with the video. If you watch a video on YouTube, folks, and you don't, I mean, even if you watch 10 seconds, you don't hit like. Why? Seriously, really? Why? Cam?
I've speculated on it before, probably about the last time you asked me on that, and I think people just get in the zone. They're just scrolling. But, I mean, of course, folks out there listen to our videos, I would always love that like. I love that little dopamine boost when I check that YouTube studio and see those likes going up, subscribe going up. And we're coming up on 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, so there's the real big reason there, Dad.
There you go. And, you know, Cam's got a baby on the way, and you want him to have a dopamine hit before he gets smacked upside the head with babiness. Jeff, when you are on our good friend and guest joining us today, Jeff Lenning. Jeff, when you are on the social media, are you a critical liker or are you well, if I'm following that dude, I'm liking what he's saying?
It's funny. I use the like to make sure the algorithm knows to give me more of the stuff that I like. So I will like things because then I know I'm going to get those types of other videos in my feed. So that's what I think about that.
There you go. And that's, you know, that's the way to do it. Not, you know, when we talk about liking things, some people like some things, some people like other things. You like Excel. And I mean, I just got to say it. I'm throwing it out there as it is. I mean, you know, we usually do these in the morning when I'm a little bit fresher. So you're getting a little bit of the afternoon, Otis, a little bit more beat down from the day. What drove you to, I mean, wanting other people to like Excel? I think that's a great way to start it.
Yeah, cool. That's so funny. Just to clarify for your audience, I don't like Excel. It would be more classified as I love Excel. He's
putting the heart on there, folks. He ain't doing the thumbs up. It's the heart for Excel.
Correct. That's funny. And I mean, for me, the thing that I love about it is what it does for me. So it's not so much like the grid, like turning me on or anything. It's more like the time savings, the result of what I get by really learning how to use Excel efficiently. So like my projects that I would work on when I'm doing them manually inside of Excel, like it's 2 weeks every month to get my, monthly close done. And once I was able to figure out how Excel actually works, it's a big place, then that same amount of work can get done in 2 days instead of 2 weeks. That's why I love Excel.
I got to ask for folks out there who may be fibbing a little on some job applications and those kind of things, that proficient at Excel. So us out here who would say, like, I am proficient at Excel. I can do some, I can do some, I can do average. I got some stuff, Jeff. How far of a gap are we talking about of, let's call you that top level. You're not quite at those Excel championships, which if you haven't seen them, take some time, pause the video, go on YouTube. There's some funny, or at least I find it funny. Jeff's watching game film on those. But what kind of gap are we talking here from just the average, like, I'm all right with Excel, to like what you're talking about?
Yeah. So first, before I answer that, let me go back to your job applicant, people.
Yeah.
If you're in a job interview and they're assessing your Excel skills, here's what you do. When they say, oh, do you know VLOOKUP? What you want to say is, yeah, I know VLOOKUP, but I prefer XLOOKUP. And it's going to blow them away. So that's a little pro tip for your audience.
I love it. Thanks for that.
Yeah. But anyway, so I don't know how much of Excel I don't know to rate myself on a scale, but what I will say is this. I'm learning stuff about Excel all the time. Like weekly, I'm picking up new things. And Microsoft is actually still investing heavily in the product, which means they're actively developing it and coming out with new things like every month. So not only is it a big place with a lot of stuff, they're also introducing new stuff. So I'm learning all the time, lifelong learning. And so Excel is still a big opportunity for me to pick up new stuff and new efficiencies with.
So how big would you say that gap is, though, of the person who thinks they know the little bit to where you're at there?
Interesting. I don't know, but I will say this. I've had tons of students come through my course and say, wow, I thought I knew a lot about Excel. And now I realize how little I actually learned. So that's a pretty common piece of feedback I get.
I've experienced that somewhat many years ago. 25 years ago, doing operations research and systems analysis stuff. Doing Excel then, I can only imagine the formulas and the things, which is interesting that. You think about, another tool that we all use, well, two other, most of America tends to go into the Microsoft products, right? Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. And you think about Word and PowerPoint, how much are you really going to add to that into typing a word, into putting a presentation together? The limits on Excel, when you think about it, and that was such a great example that you used of going from 2 weeks of number crunching into 2 days worth. Would you do a comparison? To kind of stay with Camden in the comparison. What's popping into my mind, as with your accounting background, also is the ching ching of the little calculator with the roll of tape. How many fold, tenfold, trillionfold have we come since that?
Yeah. It's funny. You're talking about the 10 key calculator that's off to the side. And just a funny little side story here. Sorry for the tangent, but it's kind of funny, which is my dad has a traditional tax practice. And so I grew up working in his office and just helping out with whatever. And I can remember when he had that roll of tape coming out in his 10 key and he's cranking, I was just blown away by how fast he could get numbers into that 10 key, And so then I went to college, graduated, got my job, all that kind of stuff. And I actually wanted to beat him. And so I found some software that could have a little competition with the 10 key and adding stuff. And it was my saddest and happiest day when I did beat him in the 10 key competition, taking over your old man, that kind of a thing. So it's kind of funny, but yeah, honestly, when you're leveraging the power of Excel, I feel like I could do the work of 10 people when you really get Excel dialed in. And the benefit for accounting and finance kinds of roles is that a lot of the things that we do, it's kind of the same report or the same structure every month or every week, every quarter. It's a recurring project. And that's where we can really leverage the power of Excel, because instead of building this, over and over and over again every month, you realize how to roll that forward and automate it. So it just becomes like a one-click refresh. And that's what I teach in the courses. And that's where you really get your true time savings and power.
What comes to mind for me is this point I usually reach in these kind of conversations where it's okay, hey, that makes a lot of sense, Jeff. I see the value. I can see how someone can get really into it and can teach it and all that kind of stuff, and it'd be so good to help the business. Then why don't folks do it? What is the reason that not everybody is signing up for Excel University and those kind of things?
Yeah, that's easy. It's because as accountants, we're taught from a very young age the DILY method, which stands for do it like last year. And so when you go through audit and you come up through the ranks, that's what you're taught. So you go into an audit, you're not sure what to do. You just do it like last year. So you review prior year work papers, and that's what you do. So now you translate that into your workbooks. And what happens with a workbook, by the way, is it's designed to do something, and it stays at that company doing that thing even as people come and go. In other words, I'm going to inherit this workbook that my manager made, or maybe my manager's manager made, or my manager's manager's manager made. And so it's like, we just do it like last year. And then you throw in this deadline and this time pressure. It's like, I just have to get it done. Like, I don't care how it gets done, if it gets done as efficiently as possible. I just have to get it done. So we don't take the time to spend learning and improving the workbooks because we feel like we don't have the time. And so I think that's kind of the big challenge for most folks.
How did you identify or really, I think there's a more root cause of it. All right, I'm into this, I understand this, and now I'm going to teach other people how to get better at that. What was that revelation or catalyst that got you to where I want to teach this process?
Yeah, so it's distinct. I remember it distinctly. Basically, I was able to get this monthly close because I was the accounting manager at this public company. So the monthly close, if you're not familiar, it's just doing these set of financial statements and journal entries and things like that. And so it was so stressful for the first 2 weeks of every month because I was overwhelmed that I had all this work and like not enough time. So I'm like, bro, this is not an enjoyable kind of a situation here. So I just focused on getting Excel to do all of the manual things that I would do. And so instead of trying to delegate to an employee, I didn't have employees really to delegate to. I just delegated to Excel. So every month I just kept doing that. And then when it got down to 2 days, like I was not working late nights or weekends anymore. I didn't have that stress or overwhelm. Like it was so fun. And then I'm like, man, I need to be telling other people about Excel because for a lot of users, they think it's kind of like Microsoft Word, but with tables, and they don't really understand how the formulas and the functions and stuff work. So I wrote an article on Microsoft Word, or in Microsoft Word about Excel, and I emailed it to the editor of the Journal of Accountancy magazine. And to my surprise, he goes, Jeff, I like that. Let's publish that. And he helped me kind of, fix it. But then he ran it. And then it came out in the magazine, hard print. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And it was such an honor to be able to share kind of the things that I've learned that I just decided to keep doing that. And so it just grew from more articles to teaching at gateway country stores after hours, to teaching, just all over the place. And then the big breakthrough was when I went to the California CPA Society. And I was like, hey, I'd love to do an Excel class live. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. And so then I show up to this live 8-hour course. And I'm like, hello, everyone, and welcome to like my first Excel course. And I was like so nervous. But by the end, I loved it because I could see people understanding. Like in a live session, you can see the understanding and the excitement. And it was so rewarding for me and for the students that I really just decided to go all in on that whole scene of Excel teaching.
How did you go from that, the giving back and, the wanting to teach, that desire to share the knowledge, all that, into building the business out of it?
Yeah. So that took a bit.
That's the hard part, right?
That took a bit. And I would say it probably took the better part of 10 years of using Excel to understand how to use it, right? So to really figure it out. But I would say it took another 10 years to learn how to teach it. Like, it's different using it. It's different skills than actually being able to communicate in an effective manner and teaching it. So that took 10 years of what I would say are hundreds of live in-person 8-hour classes. So you travel to Texas, you get there, you go to the hotel conference room, and then you teach, and then you learn, the order of the things. You can predict people's questions. And so that took a long time. And then what I figured out is, instead of teaching the same class hundreds of times and saying the same thing hundreds of times, let me just record those lessons in video format. So I recorded all of my lessons. I put them into our LMS, or our learning management system, so that they're available on demand. And that actually was not only beneficial for me, but it's beneficial for the students, because in the live classes, I would get two main criticisms. Jeff, you're going too fast. Jeff, you're going too slow, right? Like, how can I teach to the average speed of every user? But with the pre-recorded on-demand lessons, people can go at their own speed, pause, rewind. So it's by far the most effective way I've learned to teach Excel.
That's a big shift, though, isn't it? To step away from, because you mentioned that we'll use what Cam just said earlier, the dopamine hit of seeing that reaction, the individual person's reaction.
I was going to give you another example, because we talked about it before with like nonprofits. During COVID, we talked about this a bunch. It's like, you work at a nonprofit, you get to go help the cute kids down the street, and feed the kids and all that. Then it's like, all of a sudden you don't get to see the kid when they get to eat the food. It's like, all right, well, why the hell am I doing this job anymore? Yeah, that dopamine hit of actually being with the people is huge.
Well, let's talk about that. So what I do is I do the on-demand lessons so they can learn at their own speed, but I add in live Zoom calls. And so, it's not in person, but it's still live. And so I can see their faces, and they can interact with me and ask questions. They can even share a workbook and go, Jeff, like, I'm stuck. Like, how do you recommend setting up this reconciliation? And so I can provide that level of support. So it's really the hybrid of on-demand plus the live Zoom calls that makes it really good.
Yeah, that's a chapter out of our Greenberry leadership program. Same thing. What, you mentioned wanting to beat your dad with the 10 character calculator. What was it about numbers and math, growing up, that really just intrigued you you continue to stay in that world?
Yeah. So the way that my mind works, I love more problem solving and mathematics than memorizing cold facts. So like, history wasn't a strong suit for me, but math definitely was. And I can remember even in junior high school, sitting in front of Excel, just amazed at what it could do. And just to show you what like a kind of a nerd I was, like in junior high school, we'd have a after school computer programming class that I would go into. And it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what you can do with computers. This is insane. And so it's kind of math and problem solving and coding and all that kind of stuff has just always been really interesting to me.
Sorry, I got to make this joke because it popped in my head. And that's where you met your wife, right? In the after school programming class, right? All the girls in there. Sorry, I had to, Jeff.
No, she was a cheerleader, so in a different kind of niche than I was.
All right. Okay. Interesting. All right. But no, what I was curious about with that then is, getting into something early like that, For a lot of things, it's great because it's like you get that depth. But then when we're starting more the math and technology side, even getting into the AI things nowadays, you're on a pretty crazy curve there, even after establishing your knowledge base. How do you stay on top of those things, stay up to speed with that, and kind of keep going as the curve rises like that?
Yeah. So I would say that it's a lot to do with, my students pressing me with questions, kind of continuing, to help me figure out new ways to solve problems for them. but also just my own internal motivation. Like I've just always loved tech and technology and that kind of stuff. So it's always just what I'm drawn to. Like, even if I wasn't getting paid to do this, like it would be likely that a good chunk of my day would be spent just learning and fiddling around in Excel just because I love it. So for me, it just kind of comes easy in terms of continuing, my own personal knowledge on that stuff.
One follow up there real quick, Dad, before you go, is because I think this is always an interesting thing. We talk about like the power of I don't know, being able to say I don't know as a leader and those kind of things. That could be a tough place to be in it because you're getting pushed from these really good questions. And how do you kind of manage that? I guess the confidence aspect of that is the most intriguing part to me of letting folks, poke some serious holes in things and having that confidence be like, no, I'm going to go figure this out and I'll come back to you tomorrow or whatever it is.
Oh,
What's
for
your
sure.
approach
And
there?
I used to worry about that. Like, I'm like, wait, I'm supposed to teach, but what if they ask a question I don't know the answer to? And that was a fear of mine for a while. But like I say, I've done hundreds of these, so it doesn't bother me now to say, that's a good question. I don't know, but let's figure it out together. And so then we would work through the process for coming up with the solution.
So how did you graduate back to the creating the business part of it, into that aspect of, all right, now I need a team. Now I need people, within my organization, because, generally speaking, if you're an accountant, you've got your accountant stuff, right? You're kind of in this box. You've stepped out of the box to grow a business. It's not even the same as a tax accountant, because a tax accountant is still very much a here's my box sort of thing. So how did you make that adjustment?
Yeah. So putting a team in place was a challenge, and it was something like I wasn't sure if I was suited to be able to do. And so I basically I forced myself to learn my weaknesses. Okay. So in other words, my strengths are math, like computers, functions, Excel. What I was weakness, or some of my weaknesses were things along sales, marketing, or organizing, my list of leads, nurturing my leads, and understanding like that whole side, and then building the team. And when I have these team meetings, what should I show? Do I do the KPIs? What's a KPI? How do I? And so I've had to learn a lot along the way, but having that team and building it and organizing it has helped me achieve things I couldn't have done just by myself. And so my team really consists of some really smart people that are helpful. And then I also kind of consider the computer systems as things I can delegate a lot of manual tasks to. So my operations are extremely efficient. Hardly any manual things involved, because beyond Excel, there are other systems that help us automate things. So I've automated as much as I can, and I've delegated as much as I can to computers and systems like that.
Cam, we lost your volume.
Yep, that's my new fancy mic, and I have a button over here I can hit, and I must have bumped it. That's my bad. Sorry about that, y'all. But no, I was going to ask talking about building a team there, I'm interested on how you were able to find the right folks for it. Because one of the things that comes to mind, and I think this is true in a lot of businesses, but, we'll kind of pick on the, whole Excel accounting thing here, which is there's a very specific skill set. There's probably a lot of that personality that tends to go a certain way with it, with the accounting, with being more into the math and the problem solving kind of things. And that's not necessarily the business side. There's a kind of whole other personality there. How did you merge those two together, find the right folks that have that skill set while also, I'm almost picturing like the jock and the nerd that just can't get along, having that type of setup.
Yeah. So for me, it was explicitly defining the roles. So like there's product, which is me, and then there's, marketing, and then there's, operations. And so I just would define the roles. And then for me, I'm a remote only kind of business. So my team members did not need to be here where I live. They're anywhere in the country. And I didn't want to hire a full-time W-2 employee. It was important for me to use 1099 employees instead, or 1099 subcontractors. And rather than me get a deluge of 100 applicants and review them and line up all these interviews, I used an agency. And there are many agencies. The agency I use is called Belay. And what they do is they have an incredible team who, when you put in exactly what you want, they have teams that go out and figure out who the matching candidates would be. And what's really nice about them particularly is when a VA or a virtual assistant, rolls off, they cross-train them for you, so it saves you time as well. And so I've had incredible success with them finding high-quality U.S.-based candidates who fit in with my whole vibe and are able to execute the roles that I've laid out. So they've been a great partner for me.
So what was the first thing that, as the CEO founder, that you took off your plate when you started down that road? Yeah,
that's easy. It was the support inbox and the social media posting. Those were the first kind of two things to get help with, because as I'm building the courses and recording the videos, and then also trying to support people and students when they get stuck with the password, when they have questions about pricing, like all those things. So the first one was, you got to handle our Help Scout. That's the system we use for the support inbox. And then also the social media posting takes time. And so that was outsourced as well. So now I can just focus on like my core competencies.
Could you talk some about what it was like letting go some of those? Because I could, especially the social media, because that's so outward facing. We always joke about the baby, right? Taking your baby out and everyone's calling your baby ugly. Not only are you taking your baby out, you're giving it to someone else to go take it out there, right? So there's some loss of control there. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I do have sort of some details that I like to have. In other words, it's hard for me to let up like my video editing, because I have really detailed like specific things I want. And so it's hard for me to release that. I should, but I haven't yet. But for the inbox, what helped the most was having good training documentation for them. Because I do have a particular way I like to talk to people in email format. It's very specific. And so since I was aware of that, I'm able to document it and then train her on that. And so that means that the handoff was really smooth. And then we still have weekly meetings, so we have reviews on that. So that was easy. With pre-planning. And then in terms of the social media, I didn't know what I was doing anyway, so that was super easy to hand over because she's the professional, so that one was a lot easier.
So what's your favorite thing about running the business? I was going to say Excel, but that's too easy. You've already said that about now that you're running a business. What's the best part about it?
The best part is, and I love this business, and the best part is really going to be the flexibility that it provides and the lifestyle it provides. Because since I've gone through years of figuring out how to get computer systems to do my work for me, it is so dialed in and so efficient that I preload my content, I preload my webinars, I preload my blog posts. So like right now, I'm preloading a month's worth because I need to go to Annapolis to see my son and go to the football game. I need to go to Wisconsin next weekend. And so I just have all these things. And so I can preload it. And then since the inbox is being handled, it provides me a great sense of flexibility in my schedule that I could not get if I was logging in 40 hours a week, going to a company. So I see job listings come up in my LinkedIn all the time, like, oh, CFO needed here. And I'm like, bro, I can't imagine any situation where I would want to go back to that type of environment now that I've been able to have this freedom that I have here.
Could you talk some about finding the balance of doing the things that you want to do while trying to transition into more of that CEO role? Because I think that's always an interesting thing of, it's like, the thing that you love is what you built the business on. And it's like, now you got the CEO hat. It's like, you don't get to do that anymore. Could you talk some about finding that balance?
Yeah. What I do for that is, so I think in all jobs, I would guess there's the tasks we don't really love to do. I call those admin kinds of things. And then we have the tasks that I love to do. So I just gamify that for myself. And so I'll say, all right, Jeff, before you can work on your next video, which I do love, you have to pay these bills, or you have to do this admin BS that you hate doing, but you can't do the fun stuff till you do the hard stuff. So that's the way I approach it. I just gamify it with myself, and it helps out a lot.
It sounds so much nicer to say gamify than my way of thinking about it, the carrot and the stick. But yeah, that is a great way of putting it. And this, I was trying to save this to later, but it's just burning at me. What's something in Excel that most of us, other than the, kind of like Camden said, the sum and the average sort of thing, and maybe a formula or two, that us average Excel users for an invoice maybe could just get a little bit more proficient, or whoa, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I think the feature that comes to mind, which is something that is not widely known to the average Excel user, but it has the potential to save a lot of time, is Power Query. And the reason it's so important is for when you have I'm talking about for recurring processes mostly here. But the really common workflow is, all right, I have this computer system or this software system. It has the data that I need, but it doesn't have the report that I need, or the report I need comes from two different systems. And so it ends up in Excel at some point. So the typical process is you open up that software, you do an export, you save it to CSV, you open that CSV, you select the range, you do a copy, Control C, and then you Alt Tab over to Excel and you Control V paste, and then you delete all the columns you don't need, and then you delete the rows you don't need, and then you add a calculated column off to the side. And so you're doing all of this stuff, right? And then finally you can, do what its next step is, which is maybe have a summary report or something. So that whole entire copy, paste, delete columns, delete rows, add all of that stuff can be delegated to Power Query. So that next period, it's a simple single click refresh, and then the data's in your Excel workbook. So that's an area where it's a big feature. So give yourself some grace. It's going to take a while to figure out, but that one feature can save a lot of time. So that's kind of the thing I would recommend for people.
One thing's coming to mind, and I'm curious. I hope you have either an answer, Jeff, or an opinion on it. If opinions could be fun if we don't really have the answer. But what's coming to mind is I'm thinking, Dad, you're talking about it's like the Microsoft. I use Google Sheets, and I was like, well, how much translation is there between one to the other? I think there's quite a bit, from my understanding, at least, my Excel proficient level, like we talked about. But what I'm curious about is how much of that is kind of like the old railroads, where it's like there's an incentive to not have it translate over, because then you kind of lock people in a certain way. Is there much of that, of the two camps of the Excel and the Google Sheets, and probably other stuff out there that us non-accountants don't even know about? Could you talk a little bit about that kind of an idea?
Yeah, absolutely. So your instinct is right, which is that a lot of the stuff is transferable. And to say it differently, Excel was first. So when Google was creating Google Sheets, they copied the functions, right? And that way, when you upload an Excel document, it can be converted into a Google Sheet very easily because it supports all the functions. So I use Google Sheets every day. I use Excel every day. I use them both every day. They're both insanely helpful productivity tools. There are differences, though. And so like Power Query is one of these differences. It's in Microsoft Excel, and that's not something that is available in Google Sheets. Likewise, there are some really cool functions in Google Sheets that aren't available in Excel. But I think the competition is actually helpful, because I see things coming into Excel that were formerly only in Google Sheets. And so there's certainly, the developers are very well of each other's products, and I think the competition helps drive both products forward.
We a lot of our discussion has been around the course in Excel University. How did you, when you have like I just want to share everything. How did you start with, all right, let's start with lesson 1 and go up, to lesson 50 or whatever. How did you kind of mentally put that idea together to set the course up to make it make sense to everybody else?
Yeah. So let's talk about that. First, let's talk about Built to Sell, and then I want to talk about the strange story that led to the book, which led to the course. So Built to Sell. Built to Sell is a book that I loved, and so I would recommend it. And what it basically talks about is how to take your existing service-based business, which I grew up as an accountant. So I grew up in this, I'm trading time for dollars service industry. Now, Built to Sell teaches how to convert that into a productized type of business where you're selling something up front that they get access to, as opposed to logging your hours and then sending an invoice for your time. And so that was a huge shift in kind of the way that I thought about providing Excel training, which is historically a service, but now mine is more of a product. Okay. So to help with that conversion, it's about the lessons and the videos and things that you were talking about. So what happened is, I was doing these hundreds of sessions, and I had written for the AICPA a book that accompanied a live class. And so what I was going to do is I was going to take that and create a book on Amazon. But then I realized that in my agreement, I had given them the copyright to my book. And so what I had to do is I had to do the long way. And so that really started this whole evolution of thinking the long way instead of thinking for the short term. In other words, the short term is to just grab my existing book and turn it into an Amazon book. But I had to look at the long view. So I said, well, let's just do it from scratch, which was great because it required me to figure out what order I wanted to teach things in and what things to include and what things to not include. And so that whole process led to a far better result. And then so I wrote the book and then did the lesson videos. And once again, you're faced with all these decisions. Which LMS do you want to use? Well, instead of thinking for the short term, which is going to be the cheapest, you think for the long term. And so you get the best. And decision after decision was all formed by, let's think about this as if I'm going to be here for 10 years. Do I want to switch platforms? No. So let's just build it right from the beginning. And so that's really guided this whole building of this whole business.
I got to ask, and I don't know how to ask this without being more personal about the business part there, but how well did that go? Because I think there's this interesting thing of building a business that's like so scalable and so perfect. And then it's like, yeah, but there's a point where you got to go door knock a little bit or something. Like there's this point where you also need a little bit of that, the short term sometimes. How did that go in your experience of thinking long term while still, needing to keep the lights on and that kind of thing?
Yeah. I made every mistake that you could make. Okay. And so I learned along the way. I've had doors slammed shut in my face and had to figure out other ways around. So my journey was not a straight line. It was very zigzaggy. And so, yeah, I just kind of did the best I could and figured it out along the way.
So in that, door knocking, or were you able to get those initial clients, from people that were in your inner circle when you were still doing the accounting gig?
Great. Okay. So I kind of feathered it. So what I mean is I was doing these live sessions and I didn't just say, we're stopping that. I built this kind of on the side. And then so then I kept up with the stuff that provided my way to support for my family while I built the lessons, because there's a curve. You have to get ahead of the curve. So like when you're billing time for hours, you're kind of behind the curve. But once you build your asset, it takes a while to invest the time it takes to get to that. So I had that going concurrently. And then ultimately the revenue for that really dramatically increased. And then I kind of stopped doing the live sessions to now I don't do any live sessions.
I want to ask about, the future of Excel. Like I kind of alluded to, AI and those kind of things now. But before we completely shift in that, I'd love if you could paint a bit of a picture of how much growth you've seen in terms of that versus what we're looking at now. Like a little bit of perspective, like you're talking about, in middle school, the club, right? And getting into those things, then it's okay. How much has been added to the program now? And then how much steeper is that curve looking at over the last, 2-3 years with the AI craze and all of that?
Yeah. So in terms of like AI specifically, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. And so what it is so good at right now, and I'm sure will continue to get better in the future, is helping you with a very narrow thing that you're stuck on in Excel. Like literally, you can upload a file to ChatGPT, or you can use Microsoft's built-in Copilot and say, write a formula in column E that calculates the extended value. And then Copilot will do it, or ChatGPT will do it and then give you a download for a file that has those formulas in it. So for very narrow and specific tasks, it's awesome. It's also incredibly amazing at explaining things if you get stuck. So like you're in there, I inherit a workbook that you're working on, Cam. I don't know what kind of crazy formula you wrote there. It's got sums, it's got VLOOKUPs, it's got X. And so I can copy that and go, hey, ChatGPT, please explain this Excel formula to me. And it will break down the functions, explain the function arguments and how they work together. And so it is such a quick way to get a quick understanding of formulas you might encounter and things like that. So it's remarkable. It's remarkably helpful.
So what's it going to change as far as accounting, spreadsheet data structures, those sort of things?
Yeah. I don't know. I think what it'll do is help leverage people's time to help them get more done in less time. But I'm often asked, like, so for example, when I automated the 2 weeks worth of work that I was now getting done in 2 days, people are like, Jeff, bro, like you just automated yourself out of a job. I'm like, bro, I didn't, because I'm the one who knows how to automate it. Okay, so if you're looking for a way to future-proof your jobs, I would say if you're the one who knows the tools and knows how to do the automation, you're safe. And that was proven to me in my annual reviews, my opportunities that I was given, my promotions. And so, yeah, I wasn't afraid of that. It was actually really beneficial.
I wish I could, Dad, maybe you'll remember who said this. I know it was a quote from one of our guests, but it's like, yeah, it's only scary if you're, the invention of the calculator is only scary if you're working at the abacus factory. If you're the accountant using the calculator, it's not scary. You're just getting into the new tool and that kind of stuff. And that's exactly what you're talking about, Jeff. I love that perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. The what's the next leap? What's the next thing? And being open to it. That's a whole attitude that we should all, truly have, because, what are you going to do? Crawl into a cave? Because that's your other option, right? I was reading, sorry, but a little bit of sidebar. I was reading something about the book, I can't remember when it was published, Future Shock. I was reading some quotes out of that earlier today in one of my emails. Matter of fact, I think it was a Seth Godin email. When you think about it, it's you can ignore it and it's still going to happen. You can play with it and it's still going to happen, or you can adopt it and guess what? It's still going to happen. It's that whole thing of change. And I'll pause there for a comment, not really a question though, Jeff.
Yeah, no, I agree, because it's kind of like, it's scary that they come out with this stuff that could take, certain job functions, but they're not going to put the genie back in the bottle. It's out. And so what are your, now that that's out, because that's not in your control. So I often think about what can I control and what can I not control? And I can't control that, but what I can control is my willingness to maybe not embrace it, but at least learn about it and see what its pros and cons for and how I can leverage it for my own purposes.
Yeah, no, that's a great way of looking at it. And speaking of controlling and not controlling, I can control what I learn, but I can't control what I hear, because that just happens. So what I learned was dilly, man. That is hilarious. Do it like last year. That is the accountant equivalent of, sir, we've always done it this way, you know. So that's what I learned. Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
Yeah, for me, kind of similar vein, but the just picturing you and your dad, Jeff, in that matchup, the Excel versus the calculator, and it's the horse versus the steam engine. It's what we're all here for. That's technology. That's the future. I love it, and it might not be as exciting, but I think we could pitch that movie still.
No, it's, you know what it is, Camden? It's the Seth versus Tim sprint on the rugby pitch after the game.
Oh my gosh!
Seth was or is Camden's best friend. They played together, and Tim, his dad, and they had a little sprint race, and the torch was passed to Seth. Needless to say, for who was fastest in the family.
Fastest on ground. Keep that in mind. You throw him on a bike or in a pool or anything like that. Tim's got that weird athleticism.
Yes, very true. Very true. Jeff, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
Oh man, this was a great conversation, and I picked up a lot. I was just kind of reflecting on one of the questions about that transition from, you have these skills to actually building a business out of it. And it just caused me to reflect on some things maybe I hadn't really thought about before. So just kind of reflecting on what that transition looked like, I don't know, was pretty interesting for me. So I don't know. Thank you for kind of shedding a light on that.
Awesome. Jeff, how do folks find you? And more importantly, it's sign up for Excel University.
Yeah, cool. So excel-university.com/tips, TIPS, will let you jump onto my free weekly Excel tips newsletter. So it's a great way to just kind of see the new stuff that's coming out, and it's not sales oriented. It's just like links to my YouTube videos and blog posts. So it's a great way to just kind of keep abreast of what's going on in Excel. And there's an opt-in for a free course there as well, where you can learn more about Power Query, which we discussed. So excel-university.com/tips.
Awesome. Jeff, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your time with us.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate the call.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of 10X Your Team with Cam Otis. And a special thanks to our guest, Jeff Lenning, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at 10X Your Team. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass along to other lifelong learners in your tribe so that they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive of episodes available at www.10xyourteam.net. Thanks again, and we'll see you all next time.